Hi and welcome back to my channel. I'm an autistic ADHD disabled creator making content that is educational and also lifestyle content about life with neurodivergence. If you're interested in those things, please hit the subscribe button to find out more from me. Today I want to talk about my experience getting an ADHD diagnosis, starting ADHD medication and some of the issues that I've had from that experience. But I'd like to start by saying that I'm inspired to make this video because of a video that came out on BBC Panorama last week called ADHD Private Clinics Exposed, which was an extremely damaging and harmful video about how private clinics aren't always following a rigorous assessment process when giving out diagnoses. And the insinuation of the programme was that essentially people are paying to receive diagnoses that might not be accurate. I don't believe that, but that is what the programme said. I'm going to start by talking about some of the issues I had with that programme briefly, and then I'm going to talk about my own experience. So first of all, one of the things that the programme did not mention at all is that the reason that thousands of people are going to private clinics to access an ADHD assessment is because the NHS system here in the UK, where you would go to your doctor and you would be referred for an ADHD assessment, is fundamentally and completely broken. The wait times currently are anything from 3 to 5 years, which, as you can imagine, if you are struggling with ADHD, is not a reasonable time frame to have to wait to even receive an assessment, let alone any treatment or support, which is why people are going to private clinics. My second issue with the programme is that the guy went to private clinics and told them that he had ADHD symptoms, and then they gave him an ADHD diagnosis. The ADHD diagnostic process is a good faith process in that if you lie about having ADHD symptoms and receive a diagnosis, then obviously your diagnosis isn't accurate. But most people, I would think, who are paying and going to the trouble for a private assessment are not lying and are telling the truth about their symptoms. There is no test that you can have that proves conclusively whether you do or don't have ADHD. The assessment is looking at symptoms and how they impact you in your life. So if he's gone there and said, I have these symptoms and they are impacting my life and they fit with the ADHD diagnostic criteria, then he will receive a diagnosis, right? So it felt like he was kind of trying to trick them into giving him a diagnosis so that he could prove that they weren't doing the assessment properly. My next issue is that he visited 3 private providers. And there are a lot more private providers of ADHD assessment in this country. We as a family have used 2 of them, and not all of them operate in the same way. There are many private assessment processes that are thorough, that are brilliant, that are useful, and that are helping people who cannot access an NHS assessment. So to say, because I visited these ones which I'd already heard in advance were not doing a good job, that means the whole private system isn't good, doesn't really feel fair, accurate, or thorough. And finally, what he didn't mention is that psychiatrists that work for private clinics often also work for the NHS. So you might even see the same doctor in a private clinic as you might have seen if you'd managed to wait the 4 years to get an NHS assessment. It will be the same doctor, but what he's essentially saying is the doctor in this scenario is doing it wrong, but put them in a different scenario and it's suddenly a thorough assessment. Okay, I have a lot more issues with this programme. Main one being that it is an incredibly harmful thing to have done, to have put on national television that people with ADHD diagnoses are paying for them, they're not accurate diagnoses. What's essentially happening here is that people with ADHD are going to be not believed when they tell people about their ADHD, and it might even invalidate how they feel in themselves about the assessment and diagnosis that they received. Something which could be hugely validating and encouraging and help them with their lives has just been kind of muddied by this documentary, and I think that's really harmful. And I think that a much better use of Panorama's time would have been to look into why the system is broken, how the system is broken, and how that is impacting people like me. So since Panorama didn't do that, I thought I would do that myself here on my channel. So I'm going to talk about my experience accessing a diagnosis and medication and the issues that I had along the way. Back in about 2017-ish, I'm not exactly clear on the dates, I started to think that I might have ADHD. This came about because one of my children was diagnosed with ADHD, and in learning more about ADHD, to support my child, I realised that I basically ticked every single box, and that ADHD might be one of the reasons that I was struggling, even though I now had an autism diagnosis and was putting into place strategies to support me with that diagnosis. So I went to my GP and I told them that I thought I had ADHD and why I thought I had ADHD, and they agreed that it seemed worth looking into, and they put me on the waiting list at my local NHS ADHD assessment team. Great, I thought, I'm going to get an ADHD assessment. Oh, how very naive I was. So I waited on that list for about 2.5 years, and then we had a pandemic. You remember the pandemic? Still happening, but you know, that's another story. The pandemic happened and we were all at home, and my ADHD symptoms got a lot worse because I wasn't able to do what I was normally doing, which was dopamine seeking by going out into the world and filling my brain with dopamine in order to cope and feel okay. And I was struggling even more, so I rang the ADHD team to see where I was on the list and how likely I was going to be seen in the next year. And what they told me was really quite worrying. They tell me, well, obviously because of the pandemic, we've not been able to see anyone, but we're still getting new referrals, which means that our list has now grown massively, and you're going to have at least another 2 to 3 year wait. So I would have been waiting for 4.5 to 5 years, and at this point I was struggling so much that I knew that I needed to do something sooner. So I decided to go and receive a private assessment. I chose a private provider that I'm not going to say who they are. It was a really quick process to get that assessment sorted. So I went on, I booked an assessment. Within 2 weeks of going on the computer to book an assessment, I had an assessment, basically. So it was really, really quick after all that waiting. Ahead of the assessment, myself and my husband filled out some forms that they had sent to us, and I sent them back. And I had an assessment with a psychiatrist. The assessment itself lasted for around an hour, a little bit over an hour, and it felt pretty thorough, especially given they had like a lot of information from us already on the forms that they had sent out. I was asked about my childhood, I was asked about my symptoms and how my symptoms impacted me in childhood, because ADHD is a developmental disorder and you can't suddenly get it as an adult. So they were checking that it was something that I was experiencing as a child. They checked about my mental health, my history of mental health problems. It felt pretty thorough. And at the end of the assessment, I was diagnosed with combined type ADHD, which means that I was showing symptoms of both inattention and hyperactivity. And then I was advised that the next step of the process, if I would like to try medication, would be that I would be handed over to a specialist nurse who would guide me through the process of titration, which is basically where you are started on medication and supported to find the right medication and the right dose of that medication to treat your ADHD. And this is where things started to go really wrong with my process. The specialist nurse basically offered me literally no advice regarding medication beyond short-acting Ritalin. She offered me short-acting Ritalin. And when I said that I would really rather be on a slow-release, long-acting Ritalin, because you have to take short-acting Ritalin 2 or 3 times a day, and I knew that I would struggle to remember to do that, and also that because my daughter, who had already been diagnosed, was on a slow-acting formulation, I knew that that worked really well for her, and I was hoping to try that myself. At which point the nurse said that I could have the medication that I had suggested. And then didn't really give me a lot more support with that, to be honest with you. It felt like I was asking, is there anything else that you would recommend? Because this is just the one that my daughter is on. It might not be the best one for me. Is there anything else you can recommend? What do you think about doses? I was just like literally given no advice and no support, even to the point that at that point, when you're in titration with a private provider, you are paying for your medication. So you get sent a prescription that you take to a chemist and you pay for the medication. And at one point, she sent me a prescription and the medication that she prescribed me was capsules, and she had written tablets, and the chemist wouldn't accept the prescription. She stressed me out. I don't even really know how to put into words how stressful the process of trying to work with this person was, but how I felt was that I'd just basically gone, can I have this medication? Okay, great, and been given it, and I hadn't been given any advice at all. And that really didn't feel very comfortable, but it was the best that I could get at the time. And then I was advised by the local NHS ADHD team that if I'd had a private assessment and received a private diagnosis, I could then go onto a shorter wait list to see the NHS team for further support. So I thought, this is fine. I can just take this medication until I see the NHS team, at which point they will give me some support with my medication and hopefully maybe even like a group where I can learn about my ADHD and how to manage it, because it said on their website that that was something that they offered. Unfortunately, this did not prove to be true. So I was seen by a psychologist from my local NHS team about 5 months after I received the private diagnosis. So the wait time was obviously a lot shorter. I had about an hour and a half video chat with them where they asked me about my symptoms. It kind of felt like a mini ADHD assessment, basically. And she even said to me at the end of the conversation, like, we quite often take private diagnoses away, or we don't confirm them and we won't sort of treat people that have received them. But in your case, you absolutely do have ADHD, and so I'm happy to confirm that in an NHS letter. And I said, okay, great. Can I get some support with medication? Can I get some education? And she said, well, I'm actually just about to leave my job. The service is getting smaller. There's not really anything that we can offer you moving on from here. And that was that. That was it. That was that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I really thought this was going to be like a route in to me receiving support. And what's actually happened is you've just gone, yeah, you do have ADHD. Cool, get on with that. Which felt really unhelpful. So then 3 months later, I had a mental health incident, which led to me being in A&E, really struggling with my mental health, which led to me being referred to the crisis team. And the crisis team contacted the ADHD team because it was on my records that I had been seen by them, and they contacted me, and I was fortunate enough to see a really lovely psychiatrist at my local ADHD team who was very supportive, talked through a lot of the things that I was having difficulty with, but like still kind of just wanted me to stay on the medication that I'd been given by this private provider. And I even remember asking her, like, I literally haven't tried anything else. I am having some problems with anxiety, but it is kind of working, but I haven't tried anything else and something might work better. Can I try something else? And she was like, no, the thing you're taking is working. That's fine. Stick with that, stick with that. And so I felt like I had 2 appointments in which I felt validated, I felt heard, but I didn't really receive anything practical, like any education or any medication titration or support. And then I was told that I would be seen again in a year for my review, because when you're on ADHD medication you need to be reviewed annually. So that was in April of 2022. From the start of this year, 2023, I am now fully in menopause and also struggling generally with my mental health. I think it's probably connected to the menopause, but I also am starting to feel like my ADHD medication might be contributing to the problem. I take a slow release formula of methylphenidate twice a day, in the morning and at lunchtime, and every day at 2 or 3 o'clock, which is well before the medication should have worn off, I get severe come down symptoms. I become irritable, angry, tearful. It increases my autistic meltdowns literally every day, to the point where Mr. Purple has an alarm set on his phone to let him know at 3 o'clock that he needs to be extra patient with me because I'm likely to be emotional and upset. It is that predictable. And after months and months of living with this every day, I can't plan anything from 2 o'clock in the afternoon onwards, it's kind of started to get to me. And I've started to feel like this medication is taking away half of my day. So I'm getting a productive morning, but I'm losing my afternoons. And it's also the consequences of the meltdowns and the tears and the irritability are damaging my self-esteem and causing me to feel a great deal of shame, because sometimes this happens in public, or sometimes I behave in ways that I'm not comfortable with and that don't make me feel good about myself. So I decide that in about February of this year, I decide enough is enough. I want to see the ADHD team and I want to have a proper titration process in which a doctor tells me what to do. I don't know what to do. I'm not a doctor. So my husband contacts the local NHS team and they tell him, don't worry, Ella is due to be seen in April for their annual review, so we will send out an appointment for them. So at the time I'm like, well, that's 2 months away, which is quite stressful, but okay, fair enough. I understand that the NHS has limited resources at this time. I will wait until April and then I will get what I need. So I'm just holding on at this point. I'm still taking my medication, but because without my medication, essentially, life is even more unmanageable because I have even more emotional dysregulation. So I'm holding on, still taking my medication, just clinging on really to life, trying to cope, knowing that I'll be seen in April. So April comes and no appointment arrives. And we go through April and no appointment arrives. And I'm like, okay, it's April. It's now May. It's May. I was not seen in April. I was holding on for an appointment in April, and it's now May. Do you understand? So Mr. Purple starts emailing and phoning our local NHS team. They have stopped replying to his emails, and the phone number, he's phoning every day, sometimes multiple times a day, for the first half of May, and he is not receiving any contact with anyone because the phone goes straight to a answer phone. And it says that they're too busy to answer the phone. So there's literally at this point no way of getting hold of the NHS ADHD team. So yesterday we kind of reached a, right, enough is enough. This is ridiculous. I cannot be crying every day at 2 o'clock. Point. And he decides to drive over to where the building where we know the NHS ADHD team are working, to go in there and literally be like, I am in front of you. You need to listen to me. My partner is really struggling with life at the moment and we need this support. Unfortunately, he does actually get to speak to someone from the ADHD team, and incredibly, they actually offer him an appointment for me in early June. So like 2.5 weeks from now, which is not ideal because it's really reached a bit of a breaking point, but that's still dealable with. So he brings the appointment home and he hands me the letter with the appointment on it, and I look at it and it's a video appointment. So at this point in my ADHD diagnosis journey, I've never had an appointment with anyone that wasn't on video. And the appointments with the ADHD team locally on video are seriously glitchy. Their video system does not work very well. You're cutting in, you're cutting out, you're losing the screen, you're losing the voice. It doesn't feel like a very helpful appointment on video when that happens. And I really, really just wanted to see someone in person so that they couldn't stutter or freeze and we could have a proper appointment. Do you know what I mean? So I find this really stressful. But fortunately, he's also asked someone from the team to ring me in the afternoon to advise me with what to do about my medication right now while we wait for this appointment. Because I'm concerned that if I stop taking it, my eldest is currently doing their GCSEs and I don't need to be crazy right now. I need to be a supportive parent. The meds seem to be making me really, really struggle, but maybe if I stop the meds, that'll make me really, really struggle as well. Fortunately, a very, very nice person from the team rang me yesterday afternoon and I just literally cried. I was like, I can't go for this. It was a lot. I wasn't a lot. I was just the right amount for the amount of stress that I've been under. And they have advised me to come off of my medication for now so that when I have this appointment, I will know which aspects of my struggle at the moment are related to that ADHD medication. I will get a baseline, so to speak. So I am, as of today, not taking the ADHD medication until I am seen in early June. She also told me that she would try to get me an in-person appointment and that she would let me know by the end of today when that is and whether it is in person. So I would like a collective crossing of fingers. And if I have an update, I will put it in the description box. And she also advised me that I would hopefully, if she takes this to the meeting and it's accepted, I would receive a proper titration process, which will mean being put on a medication and then having another appointment 3 weeks later, and apparently having email access to my clinician in the meantime. So this would be great, but you'll forgive me for feeling a little bit sceptical about whether this will actually happen the way that they have said that it will. So in conclusion, and why I'm making this video, I'm very frustrated to see a video from the BBC which doesn't acknowledge this story that I am telling you is unfortunately far from rare. In fact, if anything, I would say that this story that I'm telling you is a very usual experience for adults who have ADHD in the UK and probably in other parts of the world as well. Do tell me if you're in another part of the world and you're having a similar struggle trying to access support, diagnosis and treatment for their adult ADHD. And in addition, people like me, I was not going to be diagnosed with ADHD in the 80s. It wasn't a thing. And so there are obviously going to be thousands of people in their late 30s and their 40s who would not have received an ADHD diagnosis back when we were children, who are now realising we have ADHD, which is a much more logical explanation for the increase in ADHD diagnosis, rather than lots of people have suddenly decided they want to have ADHD and are going to buy diagnoses. That doesn't make any sense. It's not cheap. You'd want to go and buy a pair of jeans. You don't want to go and buy a diagnosis. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's all a bit stressful, but I'm hoping this might be the point at which I get some support and I get some help. And in the meantime, I'd like to offer my compassion and my support for anyone else who's going through this struggle, because I know how hard it is, and I see you, and I get it. If you'd like to know my thoughts on whether ADHD and autism are being overdiagnosed in this country, which is another thing that is getting claimed in the media a lot, I will put a link to my video about that in the description box too, because I made a whole video about that, so I didn't want to get into that in too much detail. I hope you have found this video useful. I don't want to say enjoyed, because I hope you found this video useful. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and if you would like to support me as a creator, then consider joining the Purple People through my YouTube members or through my Patreon. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!